Now that I've created those classes, and I didn't yet, actually, those have to begin with a period. Now I can give those classes to these things. So I want this to float over here on the left and this to float on the right. So over in my index, I want the paragraph to float left. It already has a class of ptext, so I go inside that class attribute, the value here, after ptext, but before the quotation closes, and add a space. And then I can add float, what did I say, left? Yeah. Now that that paragraph's floating, you see the image popped right up next to it, but I actually want to control that as well, so I'm going to add the float right class to that image. So over here in image, I'm going to add in class equals quotation float right. So that takes the text and moves it all the way to the left, takes the image and moves it all the way over here to the right. And that's how I want it. If I wanted some space over here, I could also add a margin right and push it inwards. And if I wanted this to move in, I could add a margin left and move that over. This image actually turned out to be a good size for what I wanted. I could also go in and target that image and change its width and height if I needed it to be different. For now, for mine, the only thing I think I want to do is add some space between this white line right here, especially for this image. You can see it butt right up against it. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and add a margin to the top of the main. So I'll go back over to styles, here's main, and there's a lot of things I could do. I could add padding top to the main. I could add margin top to the main. I could add margin bottom to the header. So you kind of just work with what you have. And saying that, I actually think I'm going to go ahead and try to add some padding inside the main instead. And eventually I'm going to start to add more and more content, and I'll want some padding down here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add that padding to both the top and bottom. So here in the main, I'm going to go ahead and add padding. And I can use two values because I know I want to add the same amount to the top and bottom, and that I don't want to add any to the left and right, but I can use 0 to do none. So instead of having to write padding dash top and padding dash bottom, I'll just do padding and use two values. So the first value goes to the top and bottom. I'm going to go ahead and give it 25 pixels, space, and 0. So notice before I did the 0, it's giving it to all four sides and it extends the main out. And I don't like that, it's no longer lined up. So I can't forget to add that 0 for the left and right. So now I have my space here and not there. One thing also that I'm looking at here for my paragraph, I have this space that I didn't add in. That space is because of browser defaults. Remember that block level elements by default have space added both before and below. If I don't like that, I have to tell it not to do that. So I'm actually going to just target my paragraphs, all of them. I don't want any of them to have that space. So I'm going to target the element selector, paragraph. And that's probably padding, so I'm going to set my padding to 0. And I'm also going to set my margin to 0. Oh, it looked like it was actually the margin, not the padding for that. I'm going to leave both of those in there, however, because some browsers will use padding and some will add margin. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. If I wanted to, I could also add I am going to. I actually want to add a thin white line to this paragraph as well. Add a little bit of visual separation here too. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and add some padding so that it's not right butt up against the text here. But I only need to add it to the right, and then I'll add a border over here to the right as well. So this is that p-text paragraph. I'm going to give it padding to the right. I did 5 picks, but I think maybe 10 would be better. And then I'll add a border. And I want the same border as I added to the header. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab this 1 pick solid and white. And I actually just want it border dash right. And there we go. We have a little bit of separation. And actually, now that I see it, I'm thinking I do want to add some margin over here and over here. So I'm actually going to add to this float right and float left. Float right, I'm going to add margin dash right. I'm going to do 5%. And this float left, I'm going to add margin dash left 5%. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. One last thing, I'm going to add a little bit more space here. So that padding, right. I'm going to try 30. Yeah, that's much better. Yeah, I think that looks good. Actually, maybe 40. There we go. I can see here this white line at the bottom of the image. I don't like that. That's actually something that I would do in Photoshop. It came with the image. I didn't add that in there. So I'd have to open this photo in Photoshop and crop that out, which I'm going to do right now. And voila, no line at the bottom. Okay, let's move on and create a new section in our HTML. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and save all my files. Jump over to my HTML. Here's my section for bio. I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm outside that section, still inside the main. So here's the closing main tag, but I can go ahead and open a new section. And I'm actually going to give this an ID. I'm going to call this quote. And I'm going to go ahead and add in a little quote here. Before I move on, so I have the section ID of quote here. I've just noticed one thing over here. I haven't finished styling this paragraph really. One thing I'm noticing is that I could go ahead and take this paragraph and justify it, meaning not only the left side will line up, but also the right side as well. It'll make it more of a block of text. So for that, I'm going to jump over to my style CSS. I'm going to target that p text. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and justify that. And I was going to target this paragraph text, but I'm going to go ahead and create a class itself. I'm going to call that class justify. And this is text-align justify. Now that I've created that class, I have to give it to something. I want to give it to this paragraph. So in my HTML, here's a paragraph with the class p-text float left, And that's actually where I want to add justify as well. So go ahead and save that. And you can see that kind of cleans up that paragraph a little bit, makes it more of a little block. Because I did that, well, the image is a little bit bigger. I think I'm just going to go ahead and add a border bottom to this section before I start to add the next content. So I'm going to target the section ID bio. So hash to begin an ID selector, and then the name that you gave it. So I gave this bio. And I want to give it a border on the bottom, so I'll go ahead and copy it from up there, and perfect. So actually not perfect, but this is good to lead to what we need to do next. We couldn't see it happening because I haven't really added a footer or anything like that, or it wasn't causing a problem down here or anything. But notice that to that section I added a border bottom. This is telling me that right now that section doesn't think the paragraph and the image are in it, and that is because we floated it. So remember, anytime you float something, you have to contain those floats. So I need to pop over and grab the code to do that. So I'm going to go to the class website. Need to log in. Then here in search, I'm going to search for micro, and actually that'll probably bring it up. I'll just search for micro. Here's the micro clear fix. Need to grab this CSS right here, all of it. Paste that down at the very bottom of my CSS file. That gives me that class, the CF, that I can use, which I give to the parent of whatever it is that I'm floating. So back over here in HTML, here's my section ID bio. I'm going to go ahead and give it a class of CF. And just like that, it's fixed. So that looks pretty good, except now my image is right up against that border, which means I need to add the same margin in between sections that I have right here. So I'm going to go over to my style.css. And I think that was actually padding. I did 25 pixels. I'm going to go ahead and now do margin at the bottom of all of my sections. So I have not targeted section, the element selector yet. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just section, so that it will do it to all sections. I'm going to do margin dash bottom. Oh, excuse me, not margin, padding. I'm going to do 25 pics. That does not say section. There we go. Looks much better.